Okay, so here is a quick recap of what we learned yesterday. So we talked about web, the network of machines, so also known as internet, and how does web works. So when we connect any particular website or any web application, so through the browsers, so using internet, it goes via DNS servers, then goes to the actual servers, retrieves the data with the help of HTTP requests. And we also discussed about what's the function of a browser. So how does it manage to render the HTML and CSS, and how does it send requests across the internet. And we did start with HTML, hypertext markup language. So where we talked about the various syntaxes, the structuring of the HTML page, and in detail we talked about the client server handling. So how the client and servers are getting connected and what's the role of a client server architecture. So we did talk about basic HTML tags, doc type, and HTML head tag and body tag. And we also talked about the semantic tags, like as in which gives the sectioning of the application, let's say headers, footers, main, div sections, and more, right? So let's quickly jump. So even though we have to go in detail about the HTML, so inshallah from Monday, so you are going to have access to the LMS platform. So where you will have recorded sessions and you will go in detail about the HTML like structuring and how we can efficiently build an HTML page. And we will also take a deep dive on CSS as well. So because CSS is I would say that's the beauty, how you can actually design and how you can actually develop a particular web page, right? So you have to learn thoroughly like what are various CSS properties, and you have to learn like how to use them efficiently and how to use the modern techniques to use these cascading style sheets, right? And more importantly, how to structure your front end application if you have multiple HTML page, CSS sheets. So what's the impact and how you can build a large scale application? So maybe like having tens or maybe hundreds of HTML page. So how you can design that? So we have to go in detail about that. And for today's session, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take you through a quick glimpse of what's the role of JavaScript, right? Because JavaScript plays an essential role of dynamic web pages. Okay, so let me just get started on this. I will open that folder, demo one, that we had created yesterday. So this was our page. So what do you see here is like pure HTML tags, style tags are for cascading style sheets, and a script tag that is for the JavaScript. And purpose of the JavaScript is to manipulate the elements at the runtime. So before we get into this, I'll talk about what was the evolution of web. Okay, so जब internet start हुआ, so back in 90s, internet started evolving. So initially it was an intranet. It was getting used particularly by the military services and all for like sending the requests and everything. And later it got public. Like lot of companies, lot of businesses started using for daily communication and all those things, right? And later, at the initial era of web or internet, so there was the development of web 2. Okay, so it was initially called web 1. So where there were only read only applications, so something like a news application, like something that provides an information. So let's say a news website. or let's say Wikipedia. So that gives you some information. So you don't have options to interact. You cannot go and you cannot maybe uh, provide some information from here, right? So that type of like web applications that were initially created, so that were web one, and later things started evolving, and people felt the need that we need inputs from the user. So let's take a simple example. Let's say we want to ask users to provide information for registration. Okay, so it could be registration in a college, in a hospital, or whatever, right? So if we have to ask them information that you want to register, so what do we have to do? We have to provide a form. Okay, so initial for like initial way of picking up details was a form, and even today we use forms for that. Okay, so we have a proper syntax for that, like in the having the forms, right? And later that also got evolved, that let's create more dynamic forms, maybe like instead of having one or two fields based on the inputs, let's say we want to provide different fields or something, right? So what we can do, we can pick up that information. So let me show you how that thing works. Okay, so let's say we have, instead of this image and everything, let me clean this up, and let's say we have a form here. Okay, so inside a form you will have some tags. Let's say you will have label, and you will have a tag, let's say for name. Okay, and it will be a name, right? So for that you will have an input. Okay, so you will have an input tag here, so with the id equal to name and type equal to text. Okay, so what actually happens when you are going to have a form like this? So let me just launch this using the live server. Now your server is live, and you will see a tag something like this. So this is your form, right? So maybe if we can go and we can get rid of this thing for now. Okay, so we can do also an inline styling. So let's say instead of declaring a selector, an ID or CSS that I mentioned yesterday, sorry, ID or class, so we can define an inline style. So इसी tag के अंदर ही एक style create कर सकते हैं, and I can say, let's say margin is 100 pixels. So that gives the space around this. Okay, so around the main tag you will get some space, and your form will appear in the middle. Okay, so just to highlight it, it will appear something like this, right? So next thing what I'm going to do, I'm going to create one more label. So let's say this label is email. Okay, and let's complete that. So you might be wondering what's happening. I'm not typing it end to end because I am using a code assistant. So but you can go and you can start typing it on your own. Okay, so आपको line by line लिख सकते हैं, so that's better. So for the initial time to read. Okay, so I'll say input type equal to submit. Fine. Okay, and I have to give value as well, so that I will show that. I'll say save या फिर register. ठीक है. So now see what's actually happening. So you have a form here having name and email, and I'm saying register. Okay, so if you see, something is getting changed here. So when I'm loading index.html, okay, so I have these two fields, name and email, in a form. Okay, so this is how the initial web 2 got started. So they said, let's create something that will take information from this to something else. So by default जो form की functionality होती है, so what actually happens कि whenever I am going to submit a form, let's say I'm going to provide some detail, I'm going to say Firdaus, and I'm going to say email, I will say firdaus@gmail.com. Fine. So I'm going to say register. So what exactly is happening? It's going to make an API call. Okay. By default, form has two attributes here. One is called the action, another one is called the method. Okay, method is the type of HTTP request that you are going to send, whether it is a GET request or a POST request. So HTTP protocol, as I mentioned yesterday, that's the prototype, that's the protocol, that's a rule of like some of the rules that defines how the application sends the information over the internet. Okay, so how do you connect from client to server? Browser कैसे एक server को request करेगा? Let's say we are typing facebook.com. So how will it connect with the Facebook server? That is defined by, those rules are defined by HTTP. And there are various ways to do it. Okay, so there are two types in general. So get and post, and there are many more, put and delete and others. So get is used to retrieve the data. Let's say you want to fetch the information from a server. आपको कुछ get करना है. Let's say user information, or let's say you want to get the details, timeline, messages, whatever you want to see, that will be a get request. And whenever you want to send, push some information, provide some information, that will be a post. And action will be the URL. Where do you want to send it? Okay, so let's say in this case, maybe I want to send to some server 123 12 or 23 and 10. Okay, slash, I will say register. So if there is a server, okay, having an application onto this particular IP, and let's say my internet is able to access that, that means कि उसने वो expose किया हुआ है at this particular port, when I'm going to send the request to that particular server. Now in a common sense, think of it something like this. So let's say I'm going to say jkuniversity.com. Okay, so it's a domain name, so I have to mention also http or maybe www. So when I'm going to send a request to this particular server, that means I am defining the domain name, and this domain name is connected to a particular server, a machine, जहाँ पे एक application registry है, registered है, and then that is going to provide a path, and it is going to say if someone is going to call this register, it is going to send information to this API, and it is going to submit this information कि name क्या है और email क्या है. That's the default behavior of a form. Okay, but what I want to do, I want to validate कि भाई क्या हो रहा है इसके अंदर, instead of defining an action or something manually. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a script, and I'm going to understand कि इस information को मैं कैसे use कर सकता हूँ, because I'm going to do it dynamically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create JavaScript. So I'm going to give a brief description, but don't worry about it. You just have to understand the idea कि JavaScript कैसे help करता है आपको ये चीज, ये information use करने के लिए. Okay. So let's say I'm going to create a variable using let keyword. So I'm going to say let, I would say register button. Okay. So I'm going to pick up this button. Okay. So that will be this. It will be the input. I'm going to use document, that's a JavaScript API. Using query selector, I can provide the selectors. Selectors, जैसे मैंने बोला, that can be an ID, or it can be a class, or it can be the tag. Okay, input tag जिसका type submit है. So that's how I'm going to take up this register button. Okay. So here I'm going to say, I'm going to define a event listener. I'm going to say register button dot add event listener. So that's a, again on this button I'm going to define a click event कि भाई जब इस बटन पे क्लिक होगा तब क्या होगा. Okay, so it is going to call a function like this. It's going to call a function. Function is something that defines a particular functionality. Okay, जिस तरह से नाम कोई function, कोई काम रहता है, right? तो उसी तरह से एक function हम create करते हैं, and it defines a functionality, and this functionality कैन बी इन्वोक्ड एनी टाइम. आप उसको कभी भी कॉल कर सकते हैं और कितनी बार भी कॉल कर सकते हैं. व्हाट डज दैट मीन? दैट मीन्स कि फॉर एग्जांपल आई एम गोइंग टू क्रिएट अ फंक्शन, लेट्स से फंक्शन, and I am going to say print value. Okay, and let's say I'm going to say print. Here I'm going to say console dot log, and I'm going to say button clicked or something like, I'm going to say hello world. Okay, and let me close this. Fine. अभी अगर आप यहाँ पे देखोगे, so nothing is happening. Okay, so your console is empty, nothing is getting printed. Although आपने console log message जो है वो यहाँ पे print होती है console में. That's for our development purpose. हम console.log use करते हैं so that we will know कि क्या हो रहा है application में. So let's say now I'm going to invoke the function. If this is called a function definition, how you define the function, and this is how I invoke that function. इस तरह से मैंने उस फंक्शन को कॉल किया, एंड व्हेन दैट इज गेटिंग कॉल्ड इट इज गोइंग टू डू द जॉब दैट इज डिफाइंड इनसाइड इट. जो भी आपने कोड या लॉजिक इसके अंदर लिखा है वो एग्जीक्यूट होता है. तो आपने बोला है कि प्रिंट करो हेलो वर्ल्ड, तो यहाँ पे हेलो वर्ल्ड प्रिंट हो गया. आपने अगर और कुछ लॉजिक लिखा होगा तो वो लॉजिक प्रिंट हो जाता था, राइट. सो नाउ हियर, instead of doing this lengthy process, I'm creating a function and then invoking it. So this is kind of a simpler way to do it. So I'm going to say I'm going to attach an event. I'm going to define an event. दो तरीके हैं event attach करने के लिए. या तो आप ऐसे hard code करके यहाँ लिख सकते हो. I would say on click. Okay, I'm going to call the function. कोई भी function मैं call करूँगा. Let's say register user. तो that means कि I have to create a function something like this, register user. फिर उसके अंदर काम करना है. Second way is to add event dynamically. मैंने यहाँ पे नहीं किया, यहाँ पे जावास्क्रिप्ट के अंदर. सो विद द हेल्प ऑफ जावास्क्रिप्ट आई कैन डू ऑल दोज ऑपरेशंस जो मैं एचटीएमएल के अंदर कर सकता हूँ. ओके, बिकॉज जावास्क्रिप्ट इज डेवलप्ड टू मैनिपुलेट द एचटीएमएल. उसको डायनेमिकली कैसे हैंडल कर सकते हैं रन टाइम पे विद द हेल्प ऑफ प्रोग्रामिंग. सो यू डोंट हैव टू राइट एवरीथिंग, यू कैन डू थिंग्स dynamically. So let me show you what I mean by that. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going to retrieve the information कि इस फॉर्म के अंदर क्या क्या है. So now I have two fields, input fields, this and this. Okay, so I'm going to pick up both of these informations. Okay, so I'm going to say let name, and that will be equal to, how will I get the name? I will use again the document API dot get element by ID. यहाँ पे मैंने query selector use किया, and then there is different method get element by ID, and there are many more methods. Okay, याद करने की जरूरत नहीं है. As soon as you start using it, you will learn it. Okay, तो जितना ज्यादा आप regularly use करोगे, I would rather suggest कि always keep the documentation handy. Okay, and the register documentation will be W3 score. So you can go and you can pick it from their website. I will show you that. So I'm going to say document.getElement by ID using name. Okay, so इस तरह से मुझे क्या मिल रहा है? I'm getting access to the name object. Okay, but with the help of this property dot value, I'm going to retrieve the value that I have printed into this. अगर मैं खाली इतना प्रिंट कर रहा हूँ, I am going to access to this input, and that will be this object, that will be reference to this particular element in HTML. So let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to write a message here called a debugger. Debugger is a way to stop your script. आपका जो कोड है उसको एक जगह रोकने के लिए I use a keyword called a debugger. So see what will happen. So I'm going to go here, okay, into the source over the HTML, and you will see something like this. Okay, so let's go first and write a name. I will say Firdaus, and I'm going to click the debugger, right? Okay, so there is some behavioral problem, so I have to understand that. Okay, so यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है, जो default functionality है form की, what is that? Can anyone tell me? Form का जो मैंने अभी default functionality बोला, ये क्या करता है? It has two attributes, which is, guys, anyone? It has two properties attributes here. You guys can hear me, right? Anam, Sadia.
Action.
So there is action and method, right? So that is the default functionality for a form, right? So by default अगर आप कुछ भी नहीं करते हैं, जब आप submit करोगे, it will try to do that action. Okay. But here I don't want to call that function. So here, if you see what was actually happening, as soon as I click on register, it was calling this. It is appending the element names and it is trying to call this. Okay, automatically ये call करता है. So that is like the default functionality of the form. लेकिन मैं क्या करना चाह रहा हूँ? I want to control that manually. I want to use my JavaScript to control that, and I want to do it differently. Okay, instead of sending it to a server, which I don't have right now, I want to handle it. So what I will do, I will say event. So the event, the click that I'm going to perform, I'm going to say prevent default. उसकी जो default functionality है उसको रोक दो. That means कि it's not going to submit that form. It's not going to call that action, but it is rather going to call this function here. Okay. So now see what will happen. So as soon as you click on those, sorry, this register button, it's going to, it should ideally call. Let me add a debugger here. Okay. So I'm going to say those and register. It got executed. It got, this is how you add the debugger in the source. So what is register button? Register button is null. It's not able to find this because input type submit. Let me give the ID here. I will say ID equal to submit button. Okay. And instead of type, I would say type equal to button. Let me create it as a simpler button and then we'll come back to that. So here I am going to say Javas dot get element by ID which submit button. So I'm going to pick up this button now. Okay, so on click of this, I'm going to perform this functionality, right? So let's see if it works now. Let it go. Let me refresh and let's see what happens next. I'm going to say Firdaus. Okay. Okay. Something else is happening. So see what's actually happening. अगर आप देखोगे मैंने जो script tag है ये कहाँ पे declare किया है? I have created it at the top. Okay. तो जब आपका HTML जो है whenever it gets rendered top down, ऊपर से लेके नीचे तक. तो जब ऊपर से आ रहा है, so it is going to declare there is a head, there is a title, there is the style, and then the script, and it's going to say I am going to have register button. ठीक है, तो register button उस टाइम पे क्या होगा? I am going to add it here. Let's say कि whenever I am going to say refresh, ये automatically trigger हुआ. अभी हमारा जो कंट्रोल है वो नीचे नहीं गया. This is not yet formed, right? ये टैग्स अभी नहीं बने हैं. It is going to first call this because it's going top down. अभी हमारा रजिस्टर बटन क्या है? It's not yet built because वो यहाँ पे है. Okay, वो नीचे है. So it is going to say register button is empty. Okay, so now instead what I'm going to do, I'm going to move this script at the end. इसको मैं नीचे लेके जाता हूँ. ठीक है, so now see what will happen. So you add your debugger here at the end of the script. Okay, and as soon as I refresh, what is register button? That's an actual button. It's a submit button. It is highlighting also. You see, यहाँ पे ऊपर highlight कर रहा है register को. So it is this button and it is giving all the information about this button. Like what is the ID, what is the height, width, everything. So all that information it is providing for that button. Okay. So next thing what I'm going to do, I have appended an event, and onto this event I have mentioned that I don't want to do the default functionality, which is to submit the form, but rather I want to do this. Okay, so what I will do, I will click on register. It's going to call, but it's not going to submit now. So what will happen? It's going to fetch this name object. And what's the name object? Document.get element by ID name. What is name? Name is an input field you see at the top. Okay. which is a input tag where you can provide some information, and these are the attributes on top of it. Okay, जो भी उसकी प्रॉपर्टीज है, आईडी, नेम वगैरह जो भी है वो यहाँ पे मेंशन है, and it will have something else that is called the value. Okay, I can even go and check that. I will say I can check it here or into the console. I will, since I have a debugger, I have access to the name. I will say name dot value, and name dot value is the actual value that I have printed here. Okay, so that's what I was trying to write here. I was saying get me that object and get me value of that object. That will be my name. And likewise, I'm going to say let email equal to document dot get element by id, get email, sorry, email, and get the value. So I got email and value. I got both. Fine. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to show you कि JavaScript जो मैं बोल रहा था कि we can build things dynamically. So let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to pick up at this information and let me create a div here called root, id equal to root. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say let root div equal to document dot get element by id root. Fine. And into this root, I'm going to say I'm going to create another div. I'm going to say let I would say student. I'm going to create a student object, and I'm going to say document dot create element. Okay, I'm going to create an element dynamically. जो मैं बोल रहा था ना कि डायनेमिक कंट्रोल कर सकते हैं आप, कोई चीज रन टाइम पे क्रिएट कर सकते हैं. दैट्स व्हाट आई एम शोइंग यू. आई एम गोइंग टू क्रिएट अ div that is as good as you are creating typing a div here. Okay, so but I'm instead I'm going to do it here. Okay, so I'm going to say div, and inside that uh, I'm going to say student dot inner html that will be equal to. So now I'm going to create some html inside it. Okay, so I'm going to say h1 tag, उसके अंदर मैं नेम दूंगा, and name will be this variable जो मैंने यहाँ पे दिया है, that should be this name. Okay, and let me close my h1 tag. So I have created h1 tag, that is the name, and h2 tag, that's the email. Let me add a break in between. I will say break. Okay, so this is my student, and I'm going to say student dot class list dot add. I'm going to add a class here called student. एक स्टूडेंट करके एक क्लास भी ऐड कर देते हैं. ओके, नेक्स्ट थिंग, सो व्हाट आई डिड एक्चुअली, मैंने एक स्टूडेंट का div क्रिएट किया, उसके अंदर कुछ HTML डिक्लेयर किया, और उसके ऊपर एक क्लास भी प्रोवाइड की स्टूडेंट करके. सो नेक्स्ट थिंग व्हाट आई एम गोइंग टू डू, आई एम गोइंग टू pick up this student object, the element that I have created, and I'm going to append it inside the root div. Root div मैंने बनाया हुआ है. I'm going to add it inside the root div. So let me show you what will happen. So I'm going to say root div dot append child. Okay, student. अभी देखो क्या होगा. So any doubt here? Do you guys understand what I'm trying? Let's go
सर
step
ये
by.
रूट div डॉट append child का मतलब क्या है? मतलब इस लास्ट लाइन का ऊपर से तो समझ आया क्रिएट वाला.
Okay, so see, let me explain. So I'll go line by line. First, I'm getting the values from the input fields that I have printed here. Make sense? So I got the value for name, I got the value for email. Next thing, I'm getting access to this root div. Okay, so that is with the help of root div. Next, I'm going to create a div dynamically. Now out of blue, out of nothing. ना मैंने HTML लिखा है, ना कुछ लिखा है. With the help of JavaScript, I am creating this. Okay, so I'm going to say create element. मैंने एक div बनाया, div के अंदर ये HTML डाला, और यहाँ वेरिएबल्स की जगह एक्चुअल नेम, जो वैल्यूज आपने ऊपर इनपुट में दिए होंगे वो रिफ्लेक्ट होंगे. देन आई एम गोइंग टू ऑल्सो प्रोवाइड ए क्लास नेम. तो यहाँ पे जो स्टूडेंट, div स्टूडेंट आएगा, उसके ऊपर एक क्लास नेम होगा दिस, राइट. क्लास नेम एज इन, जो यहाँ पे हमने एज इन लाइक जैसे कोई क्लास यहाँ डिक्लेयर कर सकते हैं. आई कैन से, जैसे यहाँ आईडी डाला है सिलेक्टर, ऐसे क्लास इक्वल टू समथिंग डाल सकते हैं. सो यू विल गेट स्टूडेंट आईडी. नेक्स्ट लाइन, दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट लाइन. नाउ यू हैव क्रिएटेड ए स्टूडेंट, लेकिन ये स्टूडेंट आपने कहाँ क्रिएट किया? जावास्क्रिप्ट के अंदर.
जावा में।
बट हैव यू एडेड इट टू द एचटीएमएल और नॉट? अभी मैंने एचटीएमएल को उसको अटैच नहीं किया. सो व्हाट आई एम गोइंग टू डू, आई एम गोइंग टू पिक अप दिस ऑब्जेक्ट फ्रॉम जावास्क्रिप्ट एंड अपेंड. आई एम गोइंग टू अटैच इट. इसको मैं पेस्ट कर रहा हूं. कहां पे पेस्ट कर रहा हूं? रूट के अंदर. रूट डिव कौन सा है? तो क्या होगा, रन टाइम पे इट इज गोइंग टू क्रिएट ए डिव हियर, जिसकी क्लास क्या होगी? स्टूडेंट. ऐसा करके कुछ आएगा. ओके, सो आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू डू दैट एक्चुअली. आई एम गोइंग टू शो यू कि ये डायनेमिकली ये जावास्क्रिप्ट तो खुद करेगा. इट्स गोइंग टू पिक अप दिस डिव एंड इट इज गोइंग टू पुश इट इनसाइड दिस. तो आपको रिफ्लेक्ट करके होगा, एंड यू विल सी हाउ. सो लेट मी शो यू. इसको मैं थोड़ा नीचे ले लेता हूँ. लेट मी रिफ्रेश. ओके, we got the rid of debugger. I'm going to do this. I'm going to say Firdaus. I'm going to say email and register. So what will happen is you are going to get a div here, which is a student div, and it has name this, email this. Now let's say I'm going to pick up another. I'm going to say Mike, and it's mike@gmail.com. Register. What's happening? You got another div. Okay, so you got one more div. So now before we go there, let me add some styling. Okay, so for the ID root, okay, I'm going to say, okay, I'll say uh, margin top is not needed. I'll say justify content center, and I would say align item center. Fine. I'm going to pick up dot student. Okay, so this is padding and everything that we are providing, and we're giving background color, and I'm going to say max height equal to, I would say, 200 pixel, and max width equal to 200 pixel. Okay, and let's see what will happen. So let me refresh. Okay, and let's see. So I'm going to say Firdaus, this, and this. So you get a box, something like this. Okay, so overflow wrap. So if something is overflowing, that should be wrapped. Let's see, we will work on that CSS. Okay, इसके बाद मैं दूसरा यूजर कर रहा हूँ, Ahmed, and it should be Ahmed. Okay, that's going to be our second box. Okay, now do you guys get that kind of idea कि dynamically चीजें अगर create करनी है तो JavaScript खुद से भी कर सकते हैं. Now think of it कि let's say you have to register 100 users. तो आप क्या करोगे? You will provide different details and you will click register, 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 like with different username, different name and emails, and you will get all those boxes, all that information created dynamically. But what if instead of taking this information from here, from the input box, you want to retrieve that information from somewhere? Okay, so what do I mean by that? Let's say कि मैं information pick कर रहा हूँ किसी particular server से. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go make an API call to that, and I'm going to retrieve the data, and I'm going to display the data dynamically on this. Now, let me give you something to think about. How do you think there are I would say hundreds or even millions of products on Amazon, right? तो Amazon पे जितने भी products है, do you think there is a developer who is going to write HTML for each and every product? Do you think that? अगर वो एक एक प्रोडक्ट का लिखेगा वहां पे पूरा इंफॉर्मेशन, उसका इमेज क्या होगी, उसकी डिटेल्स क्या होगी, I would say it is going to, even if let's say he is taking 1 minute for one product to write, he will take 100 million, so 1 million minutes to write the complete code, right? And that's not, tomorrow he is going to get some update. That means he has to go through all those 1 million to find the product and then update that particular HTML. But rather, there is a very simple and very dynamic approach. So with the help of JavaScript, I'm going to make an API call. Okay, so वो API call कैसे करते हैं? So inshallah we are going to learn about that. I'm going to retrieve the information, raw information, जिसमें खाली name, image का path, उसका description, उसकी price उतना दिया होगा, and I'm going to show and display a product dynamically. That's why when you see the product catalog, you see all products are similarly shown. That is because there is same code repeating the information again and again. Okay, that's what this is doing. It's repeating the student information again and again with whatever the data that you have provided. Okay, तो इसी तरह से डेटाबेस से पूरा डेटा लेके आएंगे और वो डायनेमिकली पिक करके उसका एक डायनेमिक ऑब्जेक्ट क्रिएट होगा एंड दैट विल बी अपेंडेड हियर. दैट इज द ट्रू नेचर ऑफ जावास्क्रिप्ट. जावास्क्रिप्ट का एवोल्यूशन जो था, जावास्क्रिप्ट का जो ओरिजिन था, दैट वाज टू डू दिस. ओके, I can retrieve the information from the HTML. I can go use that information and I can create the elements dynamically. Okay, that's all I have to share right now. But hopefully you got the like basic understanding how JavaScript works, and certainly you will be a better CSS developer than me, right? I would say I'm very bad at CSS, but certainly like you can, based on your creativity and everything, you can build much better designs and different components and all. Okay, and certainly there are a lot of tools that is going to help you, a lot of different libraries that's going to help you, so you have to use those tools and technologies, right? So that's what we are going to learn. So inshallah from Monday we are going to start our full stack development program, and you will get to understand everything from scratch, like as I have demoed into these two sessions, how like HTML works, how CSS works, how JavaScript works. So we are going to pick up like these interactive sessions every day, and based on that session there will be recorded sessions which will be more detailed, more informative, that's going to give you kind of a textbook reference, like what are the properties and everything. So there will be a detailed description about everything, and then there will be these interactive sessions, virtual sessions every alternate day. So jahan pe we will work on real problems, we are going to build something on our own. Okay, and you guys are going to follow and try. And for like everyone who are interested, and I would say this is the right time, so pick it up, get started. It won't cost you more than 1 hour. I'm expecting just 1 hour from you every day. तो अगर कोई ये एक्सक्यूज लेके बैठा है कि मेरा एग्जाम होने वाला है या अभी ठंड है या कुछ है, so I would say keep it aside. 1 hour, I would say that's barely you have to spend on this program, but every day. Okay, so given that you are doing it every day, 1 hour, 1.5 hour, so that's all I'm expecting. And inshallah you will be on the other side in 3 months, like calling yourself a developer. That's my only hope, that you build that confidence. Baki certifications वगैरह से कुछ नहीं होगा. So when you have that confidence, you can build things. That's what is the end goal of this program. Okay, thank you so much for joining. Any questions, any doubts before we drop?